Fine, hopefully. Okay. Okay. Um, all right, and let me bring up the chat on my side so I don't miss any good things that are happening. Okay. So, hi, hello. Happy to have everyone here and to talk about a new assessment or a different assessment than the ones we've gone over. If you were with me on the past two, the Casey Life Skills and then My Next Move, will follow a similar format, review it a little bit, but spend more time testing it out ourselves. Show of like emojis or on the chat. If anybody is familiar with the tag, has used the tag before, it's a pretty popular assessment amongst teachers across the country, but want to see what your familiarity is with it first. Any tag users? Not so much. Okay. Um, and that's perfectly fine. I used to, for like full disclosure, I used to work for the University of Oklahoma where the tag is created and hosted. And so I'm very biased. I spent like 3 years of my life loving and working on this thing. So I just will talk happily about it forever. And I'm happy to share that stuff. So we'll do a little bit of introduction to the tag itself, or I'm sorry, to baby background on transition, and then introduction to the tag, and spend most of our time practicing. And I do see that some people, Miriam, you have used a tag, and hopefully as we go through, you like please tell us why it's your favorite. I know why it's mine, but again, very biased. So this I'm going to put at the front of any single time I ever talk about transition assessments, because it's a world that I love, but also one that I want to make sure everybody's on the same page for. When it comes to transition assessments, we always make sure that we are administering them annually, meaning every year, brand new assessment, even if it's similar, the same one you chose last year, it's still relevant for your students this year. You're going to reassess. And while you're reassessing, you make sure that you choose a variety of assessments, at least two or more. And that would be what would be considered a best practice. One of those assessments that you choose should be formal, and I'll review what formal means in a second. But any other assessments that you choose can be any mix of things: formal, informal, teacher created, so forth. I put this in the last time we all chatted and met, but independent living is always needed. It's not necessarily one we'll cover today, but it's always needed, and that's a hill I'll die on. So when I talk about formal and informal assessments, what it really comes down to is whether or not the assessment has been studied by research or has enough research behind it to tell us that it's doing what it says it does. So formal assessments have that evidence-based research to tell us that it's testing what it says it's testing, and it does that consistently. Informal assessments don't have that level of research behind them that we would consider a good marker for a formal assessment. However, that does not mean that any informal assessment is a bad assessment. Informal assessments are as good as we can make them, and the data that they provide or the information that they provide as relevant. They're great when you know that information is relevant and you know what to do with it. So that's my little spiel. That said, the TAG, which I didn't put in here what it stands for. The TAG stands for Transition Assessment and Goal Generator. And the transition assessment part is a valid and reliable, meaning formal, and you know that because it has a little necktie here, assessment. And one of my favorite reasons, or one of the reasons that the tag is my favorite, is because it was designed specifically for students with disabilities. A lot of other transition assessments that we use and reference and look at all the time are made for a greater and wider population, and we contextualize those results for our students. And that's not out of the norm, and it's not like a crazy or horrible expectation once exactly when you know what you're doing. However, life is easier for all of us, for teachers, for our students, when we are giving assessments that are tailor-made for them. And we know, any of us who've been working in the world of special education or transition, that is incredibly hard to come by. And a lot of our jobs is to accommodate and modify and like contextualize things. And this is one of the assessments where you don't really have to do that. And that's a wonderful little reprieve that the tag offers users. So the tag comes in a couple different versions, and I'll go over those in a second. But one of the important things to know about is, regardless of which one you choose, every tag assessment is going to come with 3 different versions to complete. There's a student, a profile, and a family. If you want to make sure that you're getting like as accurate results so that this is all a formal assessment, you're going to want to have 2 of those complete. And I'll show you guys what those mean in like real time, and we'll go through them together. But let's say we have an assessment or a transition or IEP and transition plan due for our student Jordan. Then we're going to give them the tag. We want to make sure that Jordan completes one, and then at least one other person, being the professional, any teacher, counselor, educator who knows the student well enough and can answer questions for them or about them. And then any family member. It could be both, but we also know the reality of having family members complete assessments for students is not always realistic. It doesn't always happen on time. And even though we make our best efforts, we can't always guarantee all parties will do their part of the assessment. So at the very least, when 2 parts are done, the student and the family, or the student and the teacher, when possible, it should always be the student. And that's a little like asterisk, like when possible. So what the tag does that is particularly special is that it asks questions not related to, do you know what job you want in the future? Or like these very like, what about this job do you know? What it's really asking are, do you have or do you exhibit those behaviors that research has told us lead to positive outcomes in education and employment? One way I've always thought about this is, if you think about, well, through research, but if you think about people that you've worked with in your lifetime, and you didn't love that person that you worked with, and you're like, why on earth would they hire them? And you look at all the outside characteristics. If that person is beloved by their bosses, has great social skills, has the ability to do a lot of things, and people are on their side, that person is far more likely to retain their job, to actually get promoted. And sometimes it's not always about the skill that you have in doing the actual job. A lot of the times, keeping and being promoted and being like retaining a job has more to do with your abilities to be a good worker, a good team member, to bring like a different life or enthusiasm to an environment. And this assessment, the tag, is targeting all of those very specific behaviors for students, which is really interesting because not a lot of other things do that. Or they do, but it's kind of mixed in with a lot of areas. So like I said, there's a couple of different versions, and versions gets used a lot. I wish there was a better word for it, but the tag traditionally and for a very long time was just called TAGG, and it was for 9th to 12th grade students who were more mild, moderate support needs, who are going to competitive employment, or eligible to go through a regular admissions process for college or vocational school. So far more for mild, moderate students. It didn't mean that it couldn't have been used for students who had more significant needs or support needs, but it actually wasn't built for them. In the past, like 4 or 5 years, the team at the TAGG team, the people who do the research, developed and put out quite recently the TAGG-A, or the TAGG alternate. And this is targeting 9th and 12th grade, but also the students who are in the 18 plus programs. And it's designed for those who are not necessarily going to be in competitive employment, though some other type of supported employment is likely, and that they would not be pursuing traditional post-secondary education options through regular admission, meaning that they won't be going into like a 4-year or even a 2-year degree program right away. That's not the path that they've been going on. The TAGG-A is primarily for students who are on alternative standards. And in California, I know the terminology has changed, but we would maybe put these students in the extensive support needs group. So those are the 2 that we're going to be playing around today. And I just put a little note there. Anybody who works with middle school educators, the TAGG middle school version, the testing and the creation of all of this is underway. These things take a couple of years, but it's like next thing you know, the TAGG middle school is up, and then this one's up, and then the next one's up. And one of the big things that they do is not just create it and put it online, it's create it and test it again and test it 3 more times to really say that it is a formal assessment. So the tag, as we are going to be using it in the way that most people do, is very ideal for the employment and further education and training sections of the IEP or the transition plan in the IEP. Ooh, okay. So, because they're two different tests within the same system, they actually target, and they're created for different populations. They target different constructs or areas or skills. The tag calls them constructs, that you could think of them as like buckets, categories, areas, skills. And these constructs are the ones that research has said lead to better post-school outcomes. So for the tag high school, which is our mild moderate group for the most part, it is asking the questions that students are being asked are surrounding 8 different areas. Strengths and limitations, disability awareness, ability to be persistent in reaching the goals and completing work, interacting with others, and so on. The tag A, because it's designed for students who have more significant needs or more support needs, or the alternate, excuse me, is uh, looking at different skills, and sometimes they overlap, but very honestly, the tag alternate is looking for skills that are a little bit more primer to competitive employment areas or traditional college entry or vocational entry programs. So it's looking for what factors are affecting or what factors are affecting students in gaining employment and financial stability. It's looking for, or it's asking questions related to a student's general character and disposition and their social skills, their primer preliminary academic skills that will support independent living, their ability to use technology, because technology is like the key to everything for youth especially, and their self-determination skills and behaviors. My understanding is that a number of you went or joined Mallory Deardorff from the University of Oklahoma at one of the past training sessions and kind of took a deep dive in self-determination. And so if you are familiar with self-determination now or have been for a while, all of these areas are under the big umbrella of self-determination. I've always looked at that as a way to think about some students are really good at knowing what they want, and some students are really good at getting what they want, and they don't always overlap those skills. Students need to know that they're good at get or know what they want. They need to know how to get it, and then they need to get it. There, for some reason, one of those steps tends to miss out for some students, and that's really where self-determination skills come in. Not just knowing what you want, but knowing how to get it and then going out and getting it. And so these assessments, even though they're all covering different areas, the big umbrella of self-determination covers all of the constructs that are being discussed in either assessment. So I'm going to take a little bit of time and walk you through what the assessment or the website looks like. And as I do that, or let me switch my screen over, but I also want to, oh, no, sorry. While I do that, I want to just stress to you all that I have like three major favorite things about the tag. And one of them is that there's only like 8 buttons, meaning that there's very little that you can do that is going to break the tag or the website. The only bad thing you can do is possibly delete something, but other than that, hit all the buttons, touch all the things. And we'll get a chance to do that together. So the tag, when you log in, and I'll share my credentials for you all. When you log in, you'll see how many credits you have available. One of the reasons I'm a little bit careful in telling people about the tag, even though I love it and it's a wonderful system, is because they do charge a fee for every test that you give a student. So it's $3 per credit. 1 credit gives you 1 test. So for this big student that built this test that I made here, I actually gave them 2 different tests. This means they use 2 credits to do these tests. It's not necessarily, it's $3 per credit. So hopefully it's not breaking a lot of banks, but I also don't love for teachers to pay for things out of pocket, and I hope nobody does. That said, many districts across the country, including your district, have paid for teachers to be able to access this without ever coming out of your pocket. And so I'll give you guys that information towards the end. But just to keep that in mind, then you'll have to have at least some credits here to be able to do a test. for a student. So brand new, what you're going to be doing is creating a new student. And like I said, there's 8 buttons. There's very little you can do to touch. We're going to call it fake student. You could put initials, you could put their real name, you could make a signifier. It doesn't, there's no like limit to how you decide to do this. Not everybody's familiar or comfortable sharing their data or their information. And so that's, you're welcome to put whatever name works for you. It just gives you a summary. And if we go back to our dashboard is always going to be our home page. So you'll see that under my new fake student, there's now a little options button. And what I can do is create a new assessment for my fake student. And I can choose here if I want the high school, the alternate, or the AIR. The AIR is a free assessment. Anybody can use it. Anybody can do it. We're not going to cover it today, but you are welcome to go in and touch all those buttons. It's a great assessment. For today, I want to show you guys the high school, and then I'll show you some results from the A as well. And then you're going to give it a name. So fake student, March 2023. Whatever versions you want to come up with. The TAGG High School is available in English. There's the audio versions. Spanish has a Spanish audio and text. There's also Chinese simplified and traditional, and Arabic. For Chinese and Arabic, you're only going to get text. There's no audio for those. I would not recommend clicking any of these buttons. They don't specifically matter, so don't worry about those. And because the TAGG alternate is so new, and I mean very, very new, it has not been fully translated yet, and the translation also has to undergo its own testing, so they're not going to put that up for a little bit. And that's something to keep in mind. The TAGG alternate right now is only in English. If you're choosing the TAGG alternate, you're going to want to click this is a real student. The demo is for when they were testing the systems over again. All right, so we're going to stick with our TAGG High School, and I'm just going to put the Spanish one so you can see those as well. And we're going to save, and my assessment was created. So it'll show me just one student at a time. But again, if I go back to my dashboard, I can see all of my students. Now what happens? I have my student, I gave them an assessment. How do we access it? We're going to click this non-complete, and you'll see the 3 versions. So one credit gives you 1 assessment, and that 1 assessment includes professional, student, and family. Remember that we're going to want at least 2 done. When possible, and hopefully it's possible 89% of your time, the student should be completing their assessment on their side of the assessment. When possible, meaning that we know sometimes the student is not always available. We know sometimes the student is not always able to access these information. And so when possible, please do that. The other thing you can do is create an email link. And if I just click that, it gives me a copy and paste link. And when I put it, I can email it to someone. And when I open and click it, it sends me to the actual information about my student. So I can start the assessment. And that was the professional link. But there's also one for the student and there's one for the family, meaning that if you have a family's email address, even if they're not going to complete it or can complete it, you have given them an opportunity to do that and to access it on their time and hopefully in their own space. Of course, they could do it with you all. You can also print it off and send it home, and you can print it in Spanish as well. All right, I want to show you the student questions just so you see. All versions of this test, I realized I put this in Spanish. It's fine, I'll show you in English as well. All versions of the test have the same number of questions. The difference is that for the professional and the family, they have 5 different options to choose from. Students are going to get 3 different options to choose from. It helps lessen kind of choice paralysis. This one is currently in Spanish, but just so you see, all of the instructions are and the questions themselves are read in Spanish or in English in the English version. And there's also an ASL video. The ASL video is actually in English, which is funny. We'll see.
Please read each item and think about what you have done over the past year.
We've been told that the ASL video has a northern accent, which is something we learned. Once the student is done, they'll just have to press continue, or this is in Spanish, but I think you see that. And let's say that they did not answer any of the questions and they just put continue. Yes, it actually won't let them save that response. They have to answer whichever questions. If they just missed one question, then the one question will come up and ask them to redo it again. All right, I'm going to move us back just so you can see an English version of this. I'm going to go to the professional. And the thing about the professional is that it's going to ask demographic information about you first and then about your student. About me, this one should be already completed. It only does it one time, but this one should already be completed. You'll see up top, it says student demographic information about the student here. So the questions are about them. Unfortunately, it doesn't let me skip through for the student. So I'm just going to put some random stuff here, but you can see as I go. The kind of questions they're asking, this is just demographic information. It has absolutely no bearing on the responses. Okay, I'm in my question. So there is audio, like I said, and in the same ASL videos, they give instructions or that read the questions out loud in the instructions. And the adult versions have 5 options instead of the 3 options students have. The questions are the same throughout. They are asking about those 8 areas that I showed you. This one's for the high school, so the mild moderate version. And it is asking the teacher to rate, or the professional, any other professional, to rate the student based on how they know or what they know about these. Sometimes, and this happens often, as educators, we don't know all of these things about our students. And it's okay to put rarely because you don't know, and that's okay. That leads to a discussion of, what do you mean I am doing that? Then maybe I should know so I can help you. And so once you're ready, you put continue, and once it's done, so you guys don't have to see me clicking a bunch, you will be able to view a tag profile. There should be nothing on this one because none have been completed. And well, it's a student, but it's not completed, so it's fine. I'm going to show you the tag high school profile first, and then I'll show you the other. So once you click on the profile, this is your result. You can save this as a PDF, attached to your IEP documents, done and easy. You're going to get a couple of these and you just click them so you can see the full thing. It shows you these bar graphs for each of the areas that the test assesses. And it's just giving you a average, below average, above average rating. Generally, this is pretty easy to explain with students. Bar graphs tend to be pretty easy, if like one is higher than the other. What does that mean? Why am I better at this and not great at persistence like I thought I was? And that's totally fine. When you have all 3 versions done, there will be a little box that says combine, and you can see all 3 at the same time, which is really nice. And you can compare everybody's responses. Just scroll down, you'll see for each of these. When you look at your results page as well, this test already gives you the areas of greatest strengths and needs, meaning you don't have to figure anything else out. It's done for you. With your students, this is a very good place to have a different conversation. We saw the bar graphs, and we can look at it here. Does this match the bar graph? The answer should be yes. And then what does goal setting and attainment mean? Apparently you're really good at it. Let's look this up. Let's talk about it. You're really great at like getting the thing you want done. What if for greatest need, what is persistence? What does that mean in terms of completing work? What does it mean in terms of like not giving up? Those are great conversations to have with these students. The next thing the tag does is give you a written present levels of performance statement. You copy and paste it and put it right in your transition plan for the assessment results section. The one thing I will say is that this assessment, or that this is written to be about the test and not about your student. So there are often other pieces of information you should be putting in here, and we'll go over that in a bit. But it's done some of the work for you. You can literally copy, paste, edit however you want. It's in here. And the very, very last thing the test, the results give you, which is probably everybody's favorite thing in the whole world, is goals related to the area of greatest need. And it'll tell you based on whose responses. So it's going to give you about 2 goals based on the areas of greatest need. And again, these goals are written to be about the assessment, not about your student. So for some people, this is like exactly the goal I needed, and I just need to tweak it to be individualized to my student. And then for others, you see it and you're like, not quite, but it's a really good jumping off point, and it gives you the idea of what do I do with this persistence area. At the very least, it helps cut down some of that information for you. And I don't actually know if California uses Common Core standards. If we do, wonderful. They are already there for you. They've linked them in for you, and you can start working with literacy instructors to figure out how to put those things together into their academic courses. If you don't, if we do not use Common Core standards, the wonderful thing about standards is that they are very vague. So very likely you should be able to find what one of these standards translates into our standards. Oh, we do use them, even better. Don't even worry about that. Use those standards. Or know that they are out there, know that this is a way to help integrate transition into the academic sphere, because it's telling you what standards are related. Okay. Let me make sure there's no other thingies. That's pretty much the features. Like I said, there's like 8 buttons. Very little you can do to mess anything up other than delete when you didn't need to. And then for the TAGG-A, it looks exactly the same, but I am going to show you just what their profile looks like. And this is TAGG alternate. Only one version was done, but it is for the areas that the TAGG alternate assesses. So all of these areas. And the goals, it does give you a present level of performance. It's shorter because only one person did it. But the goals that they suggest are a little bit more kind of fill in the blanks, because it kind of depends it actually helps individualize a little bit better. But it depends where the student needs that support more. So as an example, this first suggested goal, they actually include an example of how that might look. Oh, well, my computer does not want to highlight of how this goal might look for a student. And so they're giving you ideas along the way. This is another one where the goals are written to be about the test and not about your student. So maybe a really great jumping off point may be really good, and you just need to do the tweaks to make it perfect for your student. This student had a lot of areas of need because I was clicking through. So you'll see a lot of different goals here. Ah, that's the tag. I don't wish it was more difficult. I'm glad that it's as uh simply stated as it can be. Any questions, any kind of features that I can help clarify for anybody? Because we're going to spend a fair amount of time knocking through it. Feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. All right. Okay, great. I'm glad it looks helpful to some. To most people, it is quite helpful. And when you get in the habit of using them and you like them, I say go for it. All right, so what we're going to do, I'm going to put this information in the chat for you all. I want you all to go to TAGG, to the TAGG website, and you're going to use my login information because this is the one I use for training. If you couldn't tell by that great that great email, generic. And the password is March 2023 with a capital M. There is not usually any issue with numerous people signing in at the same time, so you should be able to go through. And what I want you to do is go in, you're going to create a new student, or you can add it into one of the fake students or the Belkis test, no problem. And take at least one version of those assessments, of the assessment. So decide which one is more relevant to you right now, the high school mild mod or the alternate for more significant needs. And go in there. I just want you guys to touch the 6 buttons that are available to try the test out, to see how it feels for you while you are doing this. As you're going through, check out those questions, see how relevant they are for your students. And know that while there are audio and ASL videos provided for most of them, there are also transition assessments are this wonderful place where we are allowed to make the accommodations to explain what's needed, to talk about these things at length. And if a student needs to while they're taking the test, there's no problem with that. You should be able to. Okay, I see that some people have already gotten in here and started their assessments. This is great. Is anybody having issues getting into the system? I'm putting 15 minutes on my timer. As you go through, feel free to unmute to chat. I'll keep my eye on the chat. I'd love to hear your perceptions as you're going through. I also still work very closely with the TAG at OU, and so I give them all my feedback all the time. So feel free. Let me know. I'm putting 15 minutes on. We'll see how we're doing if we've had kind of sufficient time to play around with the system. Oh, wonderful. I see a ton of people have gone in here and started. I like whoever said tag, you're it. Um, Difficulties because it's taking long to download. Oh, yeah, I think mine did that too, actually.
Yeah, I think it is starting to slow down. Mine was spinning for a little bit too, so we
I think we
Kinda
found the magic number.
clogged them up, didn't we? Yeah.
Oh, what a shame. Oh yeah, I think we might have found the magic number. I've never really had a problem with this. So interesting. Oh no. Okay, it looks like I may have overloaded the system. They'll get a fun email from me later on today. Because we use these trading accounts kind of liberally. We kind of all do. It's interesting that we are not able to get in as a group. All right. Maybe try again, I would say. If possible. If not, I think it's okay. Oh, we were okay. Some people are in. Maybe it's this. We'll give about 10 more minutes if you're able to. That's true. I do know that you're following the instructions. I appreciate that. All right. I know the system is not maybe 11 for all of us to be on the same time right now. That's seems to be not so happy, but fret not. At the very end, I'll show you guys, or I'll show everyone how to make their own account. It's very simple. And then once you have your own account, you can connect with Anne or Yuriko to get some of those fancy credits and use them on your own for your own students. And that way you won't have to try to get through like a testing account, which is also, I change the password all the time. So you may not be able to get into it very long. All right. For those who have been able to get in, because I understand it's not everybody, can we get some either in the chat or unmute? Feel free. Let us know how you're finding the system, your initial thoughts about using it, or if you've already used it. I do see that some people were able to get in. Macarius, I hope I said that correctly. You say it's easy to use. I've always thought so. Very sincerely. I like that there's not many buttons for me to play around with, and that there's very little I can do to mess anything up. Download PowerPoint, simple and easy. Love that. Ladon, what PowerPoint? I'm not sure is it this PowerPoint?
Oh, sorry. No, actually, PowerPoint, I saved it on my desktop on how to use the system.
Oh, okay.
Yes. If I can find it, I can share it. I saved it on my desktop. I can look into it. But as soon as I saw it, I downloaded automatically.
Good. Yes, there are some really funny names. People get so creative when they're making the fake account name. If there are a couple of like training materials and PowerPoints and user guides on like the TAGG website itself. I made a chunk of them, so like you are welcome to download any of them. But there's also a lot of supplementary resources that go along with this, and I will show you guys those as well because they're wonderful and those are all totally free. And so we should use and know where they all live at the very least. I'm glad to see that this was relatively easy for some of us to use. And if you are able to, please feel free to keep going. I won't change the this training password for like a couple of days maybe. So you're welcome to go in there. I have accounts with like unlimited number of credits, so I'm not worried myself. I do a lot of training still. All right, but I don't want to like wait for everyone to put in some of these things. I do see that there's a question about Schoolology. I'm not very familiar, and if someone is, please. Oh, and yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, maybe could you show on there, so you know how when you send it to a student and you can get that link, I'm thinking that we could take, as opposed to sending that link to a student via email in our Schoology platform, we could send it in a message to a student. I think that's what you're asking, Marco.
Yeah.
I don't see why that wouldn't work. Yeah, use that email link and then put it in. Yeah,
It's a
copy it. Yeah,
If
yeah,
that
so
is
that would work, Marco.
wonderful. One second. Okay. Oh, I need my chat back. I spend all day on Zoom. You think I'd be better at this? The ASL videos, I think, are so interesting. We just have like a little bit of like a number that gets generated to say how many times those videos have been clicked on. And it's been many years since the tag has been around, but we find, and so many teachers have also told us, that students love to click the videos, even if they don't know ASL. It's just different to see it for a lot of them. The question is still being read out loud. There's also one of my other like notable things about this. I had a lot of students who, and especially in the mild mod world, they don't want you to read the question to them. That's baby stuff, right? Like that's what they would always tell me. Or it's embarrassing, or they don't like testing. And there's something wonderful about having it already built in there for it to read it for you, or you to press that button to see the videos, where the student now can complete this on their own, but also not have the over looming like having to ask a teacher for help. And that's something that is really useful for some, and for some students. Other students want to have a conversation about every single thing that's being asked, so it just depends. All right, so one thing that I am going to note for the tag alternate, if anybody was able to go in and do the alternate or plans to, that is again for students who have more significant needs. And there is a student version. The student version is very much built the same way. There are 3 options. The caveat with the student version, especially when we're looking at students who have more support needs, they may not be able to answer those questions on their own independently, even if when the audio version is put up there. The expectation is that the teacher or the family member or whomever is helping the student is generally helping them complete that assessment, that part of the assessment, sometimes on their behalf. And like as much with the understanding or observation and inclusion of the student voice as possible. But to note that when you have a student who cannot physically or verbally or in maybe any other like common communicative way answer those questions, but we are able to get answers through those questions through our just general exposure to the student, through talking with their dedicated paras, to whomever else, we can use that, and that is totally fine. It's just it becomes a line in your report that you should put in there. But it is okay if the student for that version can't complete it on their own, just so you know. Oh, no, that's fine. This is what I want to do. What I want to show you all, this part of the transition planning, if you've been with me for any of the other assessment series, I usually try to like show where these results go and what to do with them. And we will totally go over those areas. It is remarkably easier. Like I could take out like 3 or 4 slides when I was putting this together, because the tag has done a lot of the work for you, which is great. I'm all for less work for teachers, because the amount of work you have on your plates is just too much to begin with. So when we look at now we have this assessment, we have present levels, strengths, weaknesses identified, and even goals that we can work off of. What do we do with this? Step 1 of most assessments that you give students is to review those results with the student and the family, when whatever the dynamic may be, when possible. That would be step number 1. Those results may mean a lot to you, and you get it, and you know exactly what to do with it now and how it should look in the transition plan. But it means very little if you're the only one who has that great understanding. The student whose transition plan this is about needs to be a big part of that conversation, and needs to be the center of the conversation, hopefully the center of voice in the conversation, though we know sometimes it's difficult. And it should, like, the whole thing should center around that student and not just our understanding of the results, which is the thing that I think some of us get trapped into sometimes. I know I did as a teacher, just because I know my students, I can do this, and I have this IEP due in like 2 hours. So it happens, but know that that's the first step. That's what we should be following. Step number 2 is to summarize those results. There's a little bit more information you can add, and I'll share that with you. But it's not a lot that you have to do to change it. You just kind of have to make sure it's individualized enough to be accurate for the IEP. You're going to create goals and activities. There are already goals suggested for you, or activities suggested for you. You're just going to make sure that those match the students' ideas for their post-secondary goals. And then you're going to help start teaching those activities. And the Zero Center at OU, at the University of Oklahoma, where this is built, has already done a lot of those teaching activities for you. This is honestly one of the easier presentations I've put together, just because they've done so much of the work for us, which is wonderful. Okay, when we are reviewing results, if you didn't get a chance, I'm just going to make this big for a second so you can see along with me. This is what it looks like when you have all 3 versions done. It's a little small for you all. The student is at the top, the parent is at the bottom, or the middle, and the professional is at the bottom. And it's just going to show you when all 3 people, or even if 2 people, answered questions related to strength limitations, they ranked in the average range, but the parent saw strength limitations at a higher point than the student or the teacher did. What a great conversation to have, if possible. What does the parent see that I may not be seeing as their teacher? Or vice versa, sometimes it's the complete opposite. What do I see as their teacher, or the person who spends 8 hours with them in this school building, that parents aren't seeing? And this is a great time to have those conversations, because you have like graph proof of differences exist in how we view our student. And if differences exist and within the student themselves, then we need to get on the same page. If you're seeing them have such great disability awareness skills at home, and they talk about it, and they do all these things, and they're out in the community and they're fine, but we're not seeing that in school, why aren't their skills translating? How do we make sure that we are aware of actual strengths and limitations the student has? All great questions to ask. It's really about getting on the same page with everyone on that team that has a stake in the student's game, including that student. They need, again, be at the center when possible. When you're reviewing results, you might need to define what those constructs mean. Strengths and limitations is not theoretically something that's difficult to understand, but some students have not really thought about themselves in terms of having strengths and limitations. They may be saying, I'm really good at this, or I'm bad at this, or I'm bad at everything. I have no strengths. What are strengths? But there's also things like disability awareness. And this tends to be a big area where most students with disabilities who take this test actually have lower scores, mostly because it's not something that's openly always talked about outside of the IEP. And when it is, we may not be calling it a disability. We may be calling it a learning difference. We may be calling it, I just need accommodations. And sometimes it's helping students come to terms with the word disability and their awareness of how their disability helps them, or sometimes makes them have to learn things differently or do things differently. And you may already be having these conversations, but not with the same terminology. And so they should know when this category of disability awareness comes up, it's those things that we talked about last week in study hall or whatever area. You're going to review the bar graphs next. The bar graph, again, visually nice to look at. There's one bar that's lower than the other. This will tell us what an area, where we're really good at and what we need to work on. This will tell us that mom sees Jordan, our student, as being the most social person in the whole world, and he's so friendly and lovely, except when he's at school with you, he doesn't want to talk to anybody, puts his head down, doesn't bother anyone, but is also not interacting with a single soul. And there's the difference. What are we seeing that's different? Why are we seeing things that are so different? And how do we make sure that we understand the student at their in all the levels of human complexity that we can, to help them accurately plan for their lives. It's that whole like peeling back an onion thing. The student may be a totally different person at home than they are at school. That's not unexpected, but and it's not doesn't mean we need to know all of those things, but it really does help to know some of them when we're trying to plan. And then you're going to very last talk, communicate. And it's the same. I'm going to put that in there every single time. Talking to the students is a step that sometimes gets missed in relation to reviewing their results. It is the conversation that needs to happen in order to decide which goals are best, in order to really help them figure out what they should be working on this year. That's going to help them move them forward in reaching their goals. It is such a crucial part and does not need to be a formal conversation and taking notes and all of these things. It could literally be a conversation that lasts a couple of weeks and you guys have been talking about it in those first like 5 minutes of homeroom every day. And you're just putting together these pieces, and one day you'll help the student kind of merge all the thoughts together. But it could be a debrief immediately after the test is done. It is whatever works best for your situation and your students, but the talk or the communication piece needs to happen. It just does. And I think in this case, it's not only review the bar graph, define those things. Oh, I love that, Marco, that you put conversation, not interrogation. When we ask, that's perfect. When we ask things like, why do you think you put yourself so low on strength limitations? It's not, you don't have any strengths? Well, tell me, like, it's not really pushing them on it. It's asking them why they think the way that they did. Why did they answer? What do they see about themselves that's different than what I see? And then you can have those bigger conversations of, the way I see you is the way I can see you. Like, this is from my perspective. From your perspective, you're a rock star, you're doing great. I need you to show it to me now. These are conversations to be had, but conversation being the key word. I think in terms of the tag, one of the better parts of the conversation is to look at those goals that are there. And you can say, if we worked on this for the whole next year, do you think it'll actually help you improving this area? And if we do that, what is it going to help you improve? Or what is it going to help you move towards? Is it going to help you get to vocational school like you wanted? Is it going to help you be better at social interactions, which is good for work and good for employment, just good in general for you to have like more of a social life, which we know you wanted to do. It's helping them connect these pieces, and that's all of the self-determination stuff. You may know what you want to do with your life, but this is also telling us that you have some areas of need in support community, engaging with the community, getting to understand where their resources come from and accessing them. A huge area for a lot of students. Now, why is that? If that came up as an area of need, how do we take that and connect it back to your big life goals? How do we know those things match? How do we make sure that that's appropriate for this year? Not all the goals that the tag suggests will be appropriate for your student at all times. This is why we sometimes think of them more as a jumping off board than anything else. We want students to know that this goal is not final. This may be a really good starting place. And maybe it's a great goal and neither of you have come across it before, have thought about it, but this is a doable one we can work on in the year. Totally fine. It has to be a conversation to get to that point. Once you have that beautiful conversation, those results that you got from the tag, they are going to go in either the education, training, or employment. They can go in both. Just make sure that you are contextualizing for both, but yes, they can inform two things at once. Meaning that if you got more than one goal area for a student to focus on, you can decide, or you can look at it with your student and say, this one's actually more relevant to you preparing for vocational school, and this one's more relevant for you to prepare for your job as a mechanic in the future that you want to get. And then you kind of just split them up there. For the section to review the assessment results, I added a little bit more information to the present levels that the tag gives you. And so I'm going to review those. The first is something I always start with, but I will also say I came from a very litigious district where there was a formula to writing everything. So I share my formula with you all. Step number one, you put the name of the test in there, and then you put the date the test was given. And in our case, I would put the day that we reviewed the results together. So I gave my student this test during study hall on March 16th. And on March 20, we took some time and really went over the results together. Because it's already given me the present levels and what those mean, I'm just going to copy and paste that right in there. This is the results of the test. Depending on your student, sometimes adding behavioral information about them testing is important or necessary. And so I included a statement there. But also to reiterate that, like our fake student Jordan here, he doesn't like to take tests, but he was willing to cooperate when his dedicated aide, Mr. James, read the questions out loud and provided explanations and definitions. They even looked up a couple of pictures on the internet to help inform all of these areas. And then the student was more willing to cooperate in taking a test. Information like this is helpful in general to understand what if I'm going to test Jordan in the future, I'd probably want to know he doesn't like to take tests, but he's willing to do it when he has support. But it also is very helpful in understanding that Jordan didn't take this on his own, especially when we look at a student who took a test like the TAGG alternate, and knowing that they may not be able to access the language that's in the test. And if we just say the student took the test on their own, I'm like, okay, then did they read the questions? How do they do this? They're not quite up to the level that they can access that academically. How did they get there? And this has answered the question. Mr. James helped. All right. The next thing that you could add, this is part of my formula for these, is summarize that conversation that you had. No, you don't always have to do this for other assessment results, but because the TAGG has done so much for your end, I put it in there saying Jordan, his guardian, the case manager, we reviewed those test results together and decided as a group, or they decided that this was the best goal to work on, then this is the best goal to work on. In part, that's just a summary of your conversation. The other thing it does is provide kind of proof that the student was involved, which is a huge thing. We want that student to be involved, but more than that, their guardian or their family member, this other stakeholder that's really important to their development and their transition, was involved in this process. That is usually the harder thing to get involvement for. We can get student involvement for the most part, but that's because we have a lot of access to them. It's sometimes really difficult to get involvement from family members. And when we do, we want to highlight it. We want to say they were a part of this process. So you put it in there. And then I put, finally, summarizing the known areas of interest and preference and any relevant background information about the student related to this assessment. So for my fake student Jordan here, his uncle owns a car repair shop and they've already committed to like hiring him as an assistant for the car repair shop. And Jordan loves this because he loves cars. If you give him iPad time, all he's doing is looking up cars and cars and cars. That's wonderful. So he's excited for this. However, we know from our observations of Jordan working with him throughout the years that he struggles to complete tasks without multiple breaks, and he complains about them the whole time. He's sighing, he's rolling his eyes, he's unhappy, even when he's familiar. He just doesn't want additional work. Based on what we know about him and his post-school plans, we will make just the final case there to focus on improving these skills for employment. Oh, somebody just mentioned to me that the ITP only allows for 300 characters. That is it's mind-blowing to me, which means you are welcome to edit however you need. I will also say there's absolutely nothing wrong with attaching this along with the results. Like if you're printing out those results, go ahead and fill in your formula about your student and attach it as an additional document to the ITP. This doesn't hurt a single thing. What does hurt is the document that has like 2 sentences, because that tells us 0 things. But it never hurts to have a little bit more contextual information. And I know it seems like that's crazy. Attach more to this. If you have something kind of written out formula style where you're just like filling in the blanks, and as long as those blanks are accurate and individual to your student, you can totally do that. And you should, this is my like little tip to you all, should when it seems appropriate. I guarantee you, even though to you at some point it'll be so easy to just fill in these blanks at some point, I guarantee you that like anyone else would be like, wow, this person did a lot of work. That's great. They're really doing a great job with this IEP stuff. Seems so silly because a lot of us may already have formulas kind of written out or things that we know how to do over time. Trust me, use it. And has also informed us that the ITP part of the system is being revamped, so a lot more characters. So hopefully not an issue that lasts much longer. I mean, it should be nice and chunky amount of text in there. Okay, so traditionally, I would go over how to translate some of those results into specific goals and activities. Um, Not very difficult because it gave us all the activities. We just want to make sure that we are putting them in the right section. So again, they can be employment or education training. The TAG high school works for both. The TAG alternate, excuse me, also works for both. The TAG alternate may also be used for independent living. You have to make that decision once you see if it's appropriate, but totally up to you if you think it's an appropriate goal for independent living. When we think about goals, I always go big, little, and baby goals. Our big goal is the goal that we're going to have 3 years, 5 years, 2 years from now, 6 months from now, the goal that happens after graduation, after high school. Big note being after. A lot of people, for some reason, will put like graduate high school as the goal for graduating after graduation, after being the big word there. So if we have a student who for employment, there's a couple of different options. A student who is more mild mod, who wants to work as an assistant, work in a mechanic shop or be an assistant in a mechanic shop, that would be a great post-secondary goal for employment. For a student who might be going into supported employment setting instead, or sheltered employment, which is controversial, but reality for many, that would be something we'd write in there instead. Work part-time in a supported employment setting. If you are in the situation where your student will be in one of these supported employments or sheltered employment settings and you don't know where, because that is not usually determined by you or even sometimes by the student's specific interests, it's sometimes more about what is available and appropriate, then I would leave that one a little bit more vague. And I think that's fine, because you can add a little bit more information in other parts of the IP or in the meeting notes and just let people know this is something that gets dealt with and by other hands. Some students are not necessarily work oriented. Perhaps even part-time work is not necessarily something that they can access or contribute to regularly. And so you may, for students, especially with more significant needs, may sometimes come across post-secondary goals that have volunteering as the employment section, and that is fine if when appropriate. So I wouldn't stress that out very much. I think I'm running low on time, so I'm gonna move forward. There are some goals for education. And you're going to put in those, either you're altering the transition or the tag goals that are given into your activities, and then, or you are using them as you're jumping off board to create something new and different for your student. The main thing to remember when you're looking at a goal is that you want to emphasize that the goal or the activity is a process to growing and learning, and not just like something that happens once and never again. So once and never again would be like identifying work readiness programs or identifying colleges they want to go to. There's nothing. I can identify 2 colleges by going to Google and putting college near me, and I've completed my goal for the year. What we want is to make that a process for students. You identified something. Now, what are you going to do with this information? Who do you talk to about it? What is it going to lead to? Is this actually going to help you with that big goal that you have for post-secondary life? And so we want to make sure it's a process or something that they're learning or growing into far more than you can get it done and check this off your list tomorrow. Okay. All right. So last 2 little things I wanted to show you all, and I'm just going to go share my other screen for a second. The Zero Center, where this wonderful assessment is hosted. I'm just going to click on their logo up here. Everything else on their website is completely free. Completely free. The tag is the only thing they charge for, and the only reason they charge is because they have to pay to maintain the website. Because if not, I'm positive that they would give it for free. When you go to their website, And it's linked there in the chat, but you can always access it the way I did. You're going to go to transition resources and you will see that there's curriculum. All of this curriculum is directly tied back to those skills related in the tag. They're all related. So there is self-determination curriculum, transition bell ringers, those first 5 minutes or the ending 5 minutes of class where you can ask questions related to self-determination, related to strengths and limitations, disability awareness, all of those areas. This one is tying the knot is integrating all the transition skills into English language curriculum. It's based off the Oklahoma ones, but they're also on Common Core. So go through them. Curriculum galore. It's rare that we get to find curriculum related exactly to the things that we're testing. Use it all, totally. There's no wrong way to do that. There are also assessments, other assessments that you can access. They have the Casey Life Skills, which we went over. They have the AIR, which is also on the website, but this is the paper version. The ARC is a paper version. It's an older test, but it's really good. The Choice Maker and the TAGG just takes you back to the TAGG. And when we go to other resources, you will find this is additional curriculum and material, how to do self-directed or student-directed transition planning, transition resources for elementary, for significant disabilities, a copy of all the presentations that they have done in the past year. Take them all, they are there. It is absolutely wonderful to have these resources. And so I want to make sure that you can see those as well. And last thing I'm going to do, one of the last things I'm going to do, back on the TAGG website, when you are ready, if you have not yet, you're going to create an account. The information is basic, your name, your email address, your state, and whatever role you currently occupy as a professional. It's going to ask if you want to create a demo account. No, you don't, because you'll have access. Does your state use Common Core standards? Yes. And that's it. Sign up, you get an email and to confirm your account, just like most other things, and you will be good to go. Oh my goodness, I have too many screens. There, yes. Okay, there we go. Okay, so fast, and we covered a lot in a short amount of time, but if you recall, you need at least 1 credit to test a student. 1 credit, 1 test, 1 credit, 1 test. To get that credit, you should not have to pay out of pocket. You first create your own account, and you are going to email either Anne or Eureka and request TAGG credits. Let them know you came to this, you're ready to go, you're excited to use it, you have X amount of students you would like to test. The credits do not run out, or they don't expire, and they are easily transferable. So once you have one in your account, one of those 6 buttons at the top say transfer to another transfer credits, and you just put that other person's email in there. Super easy to use. Once the person has sent you their credits, it's instantaneously refresh your page. You'll get it in a heartbeat, and you can start testing once you're ready. It is a hopefully very simple system for you all to use and simple system for you all to get credits from. I will leave the demo account stuff open probably another week or so. Feel free to go in there, take it on yourself, on your kids, whoever you need to really get a handle of how to do this really well. Mrs. Young, if you don't mind hanging out for a little bit, I'm happy to help you because I think I can fix this for you. My last little note for you all is my information is here. I'm so happy to talk to anybody about transition-y stuff, about teacher prep stuff. It's what I spend all my time doing, and I'm just having these conversations. I put a link there to my one-on-one appointment time, just because it's easier in general. But I also work at the University of the Pacific, and we have a master's in teaching credential program for anybody interested, meaning yourselves, your paras, your friends, anybody who's thought about this. Please share the information with them. We have some cool stuff coming. And thank you all.
Oh, yes, thank you. As usual, I just love your upbeat presentation style, Balkis, and your slide deck is always so engaging. So thank you for sharing everything about the TAGG with us. As she said, if you want credits, reach out to myself or Eureka. Yeah, I love the tag. I think it's underutilized. I know that we had the credits, but I even myself would forget about it sometimes. So thank you for reminding us about it and kind of inspiring us to go use it. I just think it's a one-stop shop. It does so much for us. So that's great to be able to write robust ITPs because of it, and it summarizes everything. So keep this in mind when you're doing comprehensive assessments, everyone, or those 10th grade assessments. It could be a really cool way to assess our students. So thank you all for being here. We will wrap up and stop recording. I know Belkis was going to stay on with Monica. If anybody else wants to stay on because you're fearful that you might get the same error message, you're welcome to do that as well. And I will post the resources organizer one more time in the chat. If you can do this feedback survey, that would be awesome. And all of Belkis's resources are in there. So thank you all. And that's it for today.